Right on. So welcome back, week 3. You guys ready? You guys stoked? That is a little loud, isn't it? Alright. Cool. Well, tonight we're going to talk about mixing. Let me open up our thing here so I can stay on track. DJ 101, week 3. Okay, so doing the mixing dry exercise without a controller. You can either use a keyboard mapping that I gave out, or you can use these cue points here. So if you go into the advanced tab on one of these grids, on one of these decks, you get these 3 things down here where it says move. You go to the cue section, it's basically like 3 different tabs. You have cue points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the delete button, right? So these work the same way, so we can go 1 and then, right, so we can launch this.
So then how do you go over your...
Got it. Okay, so to move over, yeah, to move over, you can, if you'll notice wherever my mouse is, it shows bars plus some value, right? So we can move bars plus 16 bars, right? Or if we want to go to this transition, it'll be an even 32. We're going to move in divisions of 4. So 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, right? So look for changes at those even divisions. So we've got 32, then we can drop hot Q2, right? Then we've got another 16, right? And we'll drop hot Q3. Then we've got another 16, or that doesn't look like it changes very much, so we can go 32, drop hot Q4, right? So then we do that. So that's how you do that, right? Cool. So let's jump into this week then, unless there's any other questions from last week. Cool, awesome. Mixing. We're talking about today mixing and mixers. We're talking about some of the tools and how to use them that we have on our controllers as far as mixing these 2 tracks together. Because we've learned so far how to overlap the songs, how to choose our song material. Now we just need to learn how to blend them together better, right? So we're going to learn how to use gain knobs. We're going to look at some different ways of using faders. We're going to look at some different ways of using EQs, and then we're going to look at a filter and what a filter does. And I'll kind of show you a visual representation of what those different things do. Okay, so first, before we dive into all that stuff, where did mixers come from? So the first mixers were used to blend multiple sound sources to one destination for the purpose of recording. Right? So what happened was we had one record destination, which was one set of tape. Gentlemen, I'm teaching a class here. So I had one recording destination, right, which was a tape. And I needed a way to get a drummer and trumpet player and a vocalist and a piano all to the same tape, right? So instead of just putting them all in the same room, different spaces away from the microphone, which is how they used to do it, when they came out with the mixer, they were able to blend all these different sources into that one track. So mixers allow you to adjust each source independently. So we can put all these people in a different room and adjust the volumes for each source, right? Mix them together. Typically used outside of DJing to combine multiple instruments into a full arrangement. A mixer is the sound board that you see at the back of a show. It's got all the faders and knobs. Same thing as what we're using here, built for a different purpose, right? So it does a few different things. So DJ mixers, the mixers we use are specifically designed to mix stereo full arrangements. So our tools are a little bit different than the tools you're going to find on a professional console like that, on a big mixing board like that. Because our tools are designed to A, mix stereo signals, which means we've got a left and a right channel separately, and B, to mix full arrangements, which means our EQs and our filters are going to be designed to be a little bit more I don't know if harsh or abrupt is the right word, but a little bit more effective is what I'm going to say. Typically on a live sound console, you want your EQs to sound nice and smooth and gentle. For DJs, we want to be able to really tear things apart. So our tools are designed so that we can do that. And we can use the tools of a mixer to improve the sound or blend of your mix, but mixers cannot make a bad mix sound good, right? So everything we've talked about up to this point of matching tracks together and making sure your things lay over the top of each other and not playing two vocals at the same time and having things ready so that we can blend the parts of a song together successfully, that's key. Mixing will help you smooth over some rough edges and make all that stuff sound better and make your kick drum punch a little bit fatter and make one song the focus rather than another. But we can't take two songs that are mixed properly together and make them sound better just by turning knobs on our mixer. So we'll take a look more about that. Okay, so first, the gain and the trim knob. We talked about where this was on the first week. It's the knob right at the top of each of the channels on your mixer, the little knobs. But let's explore some specific techniques for the use of the gain knob. In the first week we talked about how to adjust the level of an incoming track visually, how you can turn the knob and make the lights on the level meters go down and then come back up again, right? We need to look more effective. There's a better way to do this. There's a more effective way to adjust your gain and to use these knobs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through this, then I'm going to do it once, I'm going to have you guys do it. So first, we'll select a track to play and move the position towards the end of the track, right? After selecting a new track, we're going to introduce, we'll first turn our gain down to -9 dB. And I'll show you how to do this with the volume fader down. So when the old track reaches a new phrase, we'll trigger the start of our new track, right? So just like we did in the mixing dry exercise last week. And then we will slowly bring the volume fader of the new track all the way up. So that means both of them are going to be the same volume. Once you've reached the full volume on your volume fader, turn your gain up slowly until you can hear the new track and it's almost the same level as the old track. And then we're going to slowly turn the volume down for the old track. So this is going to be a very simple mix, but this is a way to adjust your gain using your ears rather than having the computer tell you what to do. So, in that DJ 101 folder you should have, let's grab some songs that fine are not Call Me Maybe. Okay, so let's grab this. Actually, I don't know if that's... Do all of you guys have all of these songs here? Yeah? No?
I think so. If we don't, just let me know.
They're on that flash drive in the DJ 101 folder. Okay, so let's go... Oh, there it is. What is this song? I'm just going to hear it for a second. Cool.
I left and then
Okay, and then let's go with this one. That's not ideal. It's Swung. Okay, yeah, we'll use that one. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this exercise. The things to watch here are my faders right here, my volume faders. We're also going to be watching my gain levels here. These two knobs right here. See these up at the top in the middle there where I'm turning them on the screen, those two. And then we're also going to be watching, I guess that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up cue point 1 on the left song with cue point 5 on the right song. That's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to set this song a little before cue point 5, so probably about 8 beats back or so. And then I'm going to get ready to launch cue point 1 on this left song. I'm going to make sure sync is on also, just for this exercise. And then we're going, so I'm going to launch the 1 of this song at the 5 of this song when it gets there, right? But before I do that, I'm going to make sure this left volume fader is all the way down, and that my gain here on the left is turned to -9. You see that right there? Right here where it says -9? Somewhere around there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just around there. Okay, so now I'm going to play my right song, and when it gets to the 5, I'm going to hit play on my left song. And I'm going to do this first, and then I'll let you guys do it. So, play on the left song. Now they're both playing in time. So this is the same thing we were doing last week, the matching of sections. So now that the sections are matched up, I'm going to start to turn up the volume of my left deck. Now, when I have the volume all the way to the top, you'll notice that even on these meters, this one's flashing way below this one here, right? So it's quiet. So I need to turn the gain up until I hear the new track. And it's at the same volume, so I can hear it at the same exact volume. Now I can slowly turn down the right track, right? So what we're doing here with the gains, the reason why we have these gains is so that we can use our faders here to be totally on and totally off, right? We want both volumes of both tracks to be exactly the same when the faders are all the way up. That way, if we need to, for any reason, pull our volume out and push it in quickly, we know that we can get to all the way loud without being too loud by turning up that fader, right? And we also want the transition from one vocal to the other to be seamless or at the same level. Because if we go from Jason Derulo singing and it's louder than Flow Rider when we get to the next song, it's going to be a drop in energy. It's going to be a drop in like perceived what?
Perceived loudness.
Perceived loudness. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna lose that volume. So what you want to do is make sure these are both the same, and use the gain knobs like this. So go ahead and do this with two songs that you gridded either last week or that already have grids in them like this. So start one, and you can start them on the right the same way I did here. So put one on the right and put it at Q point 5, hot Q5, and back it up a little bit. And then start song 1 at hot Q1, deck A at hot Q1, turn the volume up for deck B, and play it. And when you get to that 5, play the second one, and then turn your gain from -9. Well, first volume up, then your gain up, right? Does that make sense? Questions about this? Okay, give it a try. Go. Jam out. Make some noise. That's good? Yeah? Okay, let's break this down a little bit more. So the reason, the way we have to think of these faders, and we're going to come more to these faders later, these faders are our controllers. And you can think of these faders like light switches, where all the way up is on and all the way down is off, right? And it's essentially the way we want to simplify these controls. We have a lot of range in the middle to play around with, but we want it to be all the way on, all the way off. And we want all the way on for both tracks to be the same, right? That's essentially the way we want it to happen. And in order to get that, we use our gains to adjust them to be the same level, right? So, I'll give you an example of doing the same mix with the volume too quiet on the track coming in. And then I'll give you an example of the same mix with the volume too loud, right? And I'll try to keep the volume low so I don't blow anyone's eardrums out for that second one. So first one, I'll do the same mix, but I'm going to give you an example of mixing this in too quiet, right? So. You see how you're like, where's the song? Where did it go? Give me that back, right? Okay, so that's the first one. So that's why you don't want it to be too quiet. And here's why you don't want it to be too loud. It's already too loud, right? Yeah, exactly. You're like, down, so just blow your ears out. You're like, what happened, right? It's just too loud. It's too blaringly loud. So we want to make sure that, and immediately the new song overtakes the old one. Immediately, just completely obliterates it.
So is the reason for doing that with controlling, because you got two elements of control, is the reason for not just using the fader because two tracks could have a different level? So if you bring it up slowly and then add that in, you're matching it by your ear?
Yes, exactly. So most tracks that you hear that are produced within the last 4 or 5 years are going to be mastered to be smashed as loud as they can be, right? So they're going to be, you'll see all of the lines hit almost the very top of all the edges all the time, right? I just played a birthday the other day that had some great examples. So if I take a song that was not produced in the last 20 years and we do something like this, right? So the Beatles, you'll notice that the waveform while also having no bass, is very, very quiet, right? It doesn't hit the edges of the screen. It doesn't hit the edges of that. So it's much, much quieter, right? So in order to get this song as loud, I need to turn it up louder to make it match the song that I'm playing. Does that make sense? So that's the main reason why that exists. But you will also find some newer songs that are quieter than others. You'll also find some newer songs that are way louder than others. There's a couple of deadmau5 tracks that I have that are like there's no give away from the edge of the line here. The song is pushed to the very maximum line on this thing all the time. That's too loud. It's too loud.
Tell Joel about it.
But I guess TS is like, yeah.
So that like negative 0.9 decibels, that's, how is that measured? Like it's just that much quieter than the original track?
Got it. Yes.
Okay.
So when we talk about this gain knob, if we go, so 0 dB is at what the volume of the track is recorded at, right? 0 is what's called nominal level in audio. We're not adding anything or subtracting anything. Plus is adding something and minus is subtracting something, of course. So decibels are a way to measure loudness. It's kind of weird how they do it. So 3 decibels is twice as loud. It's on a it's on the exponential graph. It's similar to frequency, what we looked at the first week, in that it's strange. So 3 dB is twice as loud. So when we lowered the volume of this track 9 dB, we essentially turned the track down 3 times, right? So it's 3 times quieter than the other track. So we do that so that as we bring it up, we hear it from way too quiet into the range. And if in case we go too loud, we can then bring it back again and make them really equal, really even, right? This is, have any of you played guitar before? You have, okay. This is much like tuning a guitar. The way you tune a guitar is you play one string that's and then you play another string that's and then you have that string go you bring it a little above and then back down to the level of the first string, right? Yeah. Same way as we're going to do here. We're going to take the gain of our new track and bring it up, and during a performance you never want to bring it like too far above because you're going to blow people's ears out. So usually you want to get those willies out when you're performing, but bring your volume up until the new song matches the level that you can hear, right?
And is there any way to determine the level of gain of a track other than just by looking at the waveform?
Yes, that's using these meters here. So like the 2 meters that we have in the middle, if we notice, this song is peaking at about this level and this song is peaking at about this level, right? So if I want to bring this one up to match the level of this track, I want to bring it up so that it's peaking about here. So I'm going to take this gain knob and turn it up. You'll see as I turn it up, it's getting louder and louder, right? And I can turn it up too loud and it can be way too loud and be way too... So we want to make it so that it's pushing right at the same level, right? So that the levels are flashing right about the same. And what you will practice with faders, and we're going to look at faders a little bit more later, is different techniques for moving a fader. You want to be able to push it in quickly. You also want to be able to move it smoothly, right? You want to be able to move it to places quickly, but use the entire range of the fader as your expression. And you don't want to have to stop yourself at 3/4 because the song's too loud. You want to be able to push it all the way. Yeah.
So if you use the example of being able to throw it up, but how can you make sure that this isn't too loud from the get-go? Because are you watching those levels as you come into the track before you play it?
So the levels, you'll notice that both on my screen here and on the S4, those levels flash even with the faders down, right? So I can compare the volume of 2 or 3 or 4 tracks.
So you get them to match before you bring it in.
Gotcha. Right. It's an exercise to do it by your ear so that you will learn to hear it. So that if something is too loud but your computer doesn't say it's too loud, you can back it off a little bit. Or if it's too quiet and your computer says it isn't too quiet, you can push it in a little more, right? Really what this is getting you to the point where... Never mind. But computers are not always right. Right? Same thing with grids. We've run into a couple songs in this class where I load it and I'm like, oh, grid's not right, we'll use something else, right? It's because the computer hasn't listened to the song correctly. Well, that happens both for gain and for tempo and for everything else. So, we want to use our ears to be able to overcome those errors, because it's more, well, because it's really important. We'll say that. Okay, cool. Questions about gain? Does that make sense? Cool. That's an exercise to practice when you have, if you have a controller. Okay, so there is something called auto gain in Traktor, and I guess I jumped ahead to this. So Traktor will listen to all your songs as you put them in. You ever notice how when you throw a song into Traktor, there's that bar along the bottom that goes like fills up? Yeah. Traktor's listening to the song, and it's saying this is the key, this is the BPM, this is the volume, right? So it's setting your grid and your key, but it's also setting what's called your auto gain. So it's going to listen for the peaks in the track and set the track so that when you load them, it'll automatically adjust volume if it's too quiet or too loud, which is pretty cool. Sometimes it's wrong, so this is why we do the exercise where we do it by ear, right? Here we go. Okay, so now let's talk about volume faders. Volume faders let you adjust volume from all the way off to all the way on and anywhere in between. We'll talk about two techniques for using volume faders, the slow fade and the cut, and then we're going to combine them into some combos. So first, the slow fade. We'll use a slow fade to slowly introduce new sounds from a new track into an old track. Slow fades work well when done at the same time as your phrase changes, or over the course of a phrase change. Okay, so let's now play with some of these fader techniques. So I'm going to do a slow fade, and I'm going to only use these controls here, so these two faders. So let's go back to the two songs I was using before. We're going to use Don't Wanna Go Home and My Ground. We're going to use the same two songs for all of these mixes. That way you guys can kind of hear the difference. You'll get sick of it. Don't worry, it won't be the first time. So here we go. So I'm going to play this one, and then I'm going to use a slow fade to mix it in. Cool. So I'm slowly bringing this fader in. I'm probably going to try and get to about halfway during this first phrase. Right? So around there. And now as we hear those vocals come in, I'm going to start to slowly push it in over the course of this phrase. Now I'm going to slow fade out of the old track, right? But this time I'm going to do it over the course of just one phrase. Right? Cool, so that's a slow fade, right? It's pretty simple. Just do it smooth, keep it slow, keep it chill like that. Okay. Next thing we have is a fast cut, right? Fast cut is just quickly. So I'm going to do the same mix using a fast cut, or using just fast cuts. Probably should go something like this. Cool, so those are fast cuts. That make sense? Those are pretty abrupt, right? It starts to get cool when you can combine the two and use one and the other, or part of one and part of the other, or do a little combo or something. And so here's an example of those. So the first one. So the first one, we can slowly fade volume in. And as we get to the end of the phrase, we can cut out the whole song for the last like 4 beats. And then push it in. Right? So we've slowly faded to introduce a part of the track, cut it out, cut it back in again. So now when we're fading out of the track this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my left finger and I'm going to put it on the controller. I'm going to use my right hand to cut. So my left finger is going to fade and my right hand is going to cut. There's a couple little combos you can do. That makes sense? Cool. So,
Quick question?
yes.
How do you get your BPM back to that exact 122?
Cool. When tracks are playing, you have to have one track playing. It's going to be the master. That track, take your fader and just move it straight to the middle right there.
So whatever one you play first, does it already always automatically select master?
The track that's playing longest is always the master. So I'll show you. So if we do, this isn't going to be a good mix, but if I play this left one, and then if I bring the right one out, as soon as I turn it off, watch the master switch here, right? So whichever track is playing the longest is going to be the master,
Okay.
right? So that works really well because when you're mixing from a song, it's the master, usually always. When you start to do more decks, that changes, but yeah, it's usually the deck you're mixing from that's automatically the master. Yes?
Do certain genres kind of lend themselves to different style? Like, it seems like the slow thing I hear a lot, like in trance or something like that, then maybe. Is it fair to generalize like that, or are you just using both regardless of what you're mixing?
It's very fair to generalize like that. I would say that, and we were actually talking about this at the soccer game this weekend. We did the DJ kind of thing soccer game, Rapids game. When you mix something like trance, or usually a lot of EDM, electro, or even dubstep, usually you have slow mixes. Dubstep is different. You usually have like a slow mix that kind of extends over the course of a whole phrase or two. Usually phrases are twice as long as they are in top 40s. That's that. Dubstep and trap have created a new kind of DJing where you pretty much just like mix something in quickly and then just drop it, and then drop the other one out, right? And you can kind of go back and forth that way. That seems to be a trend. What I would say is, if you learn to use both techniques interchangeably, you can do some interesting tricks that you won't be able to do elsewhere. And I'll actually show you another one here in a second. What else was I going to say? Oh, so what we were talking about was mixing top 40 will give you... Mixing top 40 is one of the biggest challenges you can have as a DJ, because your crowd is not as forgiving as an EDM crowd, as an electronic dance music crowd. So you need to be able to hit each song phrase to phrase to phrase to phrase perfectly. Like the end of one verse is the beginning of another chorus, and so on and so forth. But with that, you also need to be able to know when to slowly introduce parts of a new song that's too abruptly different from the old song, so that people know what they're expecting, and people can expect what's coming ahead, so they don't get jarred and go by a drink, right? So the thing we were just talking about is that if you want to practice this, mix top 40, because it's usually the most challenging to make sound good, and you need to make sure your fader movements are correct. When I was starting to DJ, I would plan out a set of like 16 songs of stuff that I knew mixed well together. And then I would do the set, and when I did a transition that didn't sound right, I would figure out a different way to do the same transition. And then I'd figure out a different way to do the same transition, and a different way to do the same transition, until I had like 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that worked. Because a lot of times you'd find 3 or 4 or 5 that worked, and 7 or 8 that didn't. So you'd figure out which ways work, and then when you start to play out live, some of that stuff that works will come out, right? It's pretty cool. Something else that you can do is, instead of just introducing, doing cuts and fades over the course of a phrase, you can do cuts and fades over the course of smaller beats, right? So if I do something like this, again, we'll do the same mix again. So if I want to do something like this, I can go, right? So my fade, right? Cut, fade, cut, fade, cut, fade, cut, fade, cut, fade, right? So you can do things like that, right? Or you can fade and then cut, fade and then cut, right? So all of those different techniques are different ways that you can just add expression. So what we're starting to do here is now introduce a lot of the instrumentalism of DJing, right? So now instead of just mixing 2 songs together, you are adding expression, you're adding movement, you're adding crescendos, you're adding attenuation, you're adding all this movement to the songs that didn't exist before, right? So this is really where you can start to get really expressive with things. Yeah, and your faders are your main tools for that. So notice that every single DJ controller has faders of some kind.
Does that wear them out?
Yes, but DJ controllers are built to do it. Back when DJ mixers, like scratch DJ mixers, were like the thing to buy, DJ mixers would say faders have 100,000 cycles on them or something, right? So that's how they would advertise this mixer. This fader is 100,000 cycles, right? Like that's versus the 80,000 cycles that these other guys have, right? So like that's the thing. But yes, you will wear out mixers. You will also throw these caps off a lot. I mean, how many times have you seen like at a show like someone like it happens all the time. You mind grabbing that for me? So I DJ, I don't play any sports. So okay, so cool. So that's faders. Practice them, make messes, destroy them. The way you want to approach practicing these things is you want to have all of these ideas and techniques that you want to practice, and you want to think of like they're in the floor, on the floor, right? Just all over your practice space, they're just on the floor. Those are your ideas, or you can put them on a notepad. Practice them in your practice space until you get good at them, and then eventually they will come out in your playing. So essentially divide your practice into two different kinds of sessions. You've got the one session where you're learning a new technique, and simplify it down into the most simple thing and spend 5 minutes on it. Don't wear yourself out. Then you want to practice just just playing, just jamming, just making music. Because that's what you love and that's what it's all about. You want to devote a lot of time to having fun. And then eventually all those techniques you're practicing are going to find their way into your bag that you're going to pull out in the middle of a mix and you won't even know what happened. It'll be great. So, cool. Those are fades. So, next, does anyone have any questions on that before we move on? I don't want to jump ahead too fast. I get excited. Okay. So next we're going to take a break and look at how an EQ works. To do that, I'm going to open a program called Ableton. Ableton is it's a production live performance program. It does a lot of really cool things. Cool. So let's take a look at how an EQ works. For this demonstration, I'm going to use a device in Ableton called an EQ8, which is just a better way to visualize what an EQ is and what an EQ does. So what we have in an EQ, or what we have in this scale, is frequency, right? From left to right. So it's low frequencies to the left, high frequencies to the right. So if we're listening to this song, you can see that bass poking up in the low end, right? Right? So this is how the song looks. Frequency, volume is up and down. So what an EQ does is it allows us to adjust bands. So I'm going to set up a couple bands for us here that look like a DJ EQ. So we're going to do something like around here, and this is going to be a low shelf. Okay, that's our low band. And then we also have our mid band, which is going to be probably somewhere around here with our Q, like here probably. No, it's the other way. Okay, cool, yeah, something like that. It's not probably perfect, but that's okay, it'll work. Then we also have our high shelf, which is up here. Okay, and that's going to be frequency. It's probably going to be somewhere like up in this range. And then I'm also going to set up a couple of filters, just so we have them. Okay, so EQ. If I turn this gain, the gain control is the one that we have on our mixer, right? If I turn this gain up on lows, it's going to turn our low frequencies up, right? If we turn that down, it's going to turn our low frequencies down. So we don't have any bass, we don't have any low frequencies. Right, exactly. So, we're going to wait till this. Okay, so you notice as the kick drum drops in, there's no kick drum there, right? Like it should be. So here's the chorus with bass and without, right? So I can pull all of that bass out of the track. We'll do the same thing for mids, right? This is what our mids sound like. track sounds like without mids, right? Just bass and highs. So that's our mid, and then we've got our highs. So that's what they look like. Is that helpful? That kind of visual demonstration there? Okay, so that's what the EQ is doing to your track, right? And you can hear how that works when you flip over to Traktor and play a song. Yeah, we'll just play this one. So if I take my low and I turn it down, my mid, turn it down, my high, turn it down. Now all of them are down. I can turn them up individually. That's what my high sounds like. That's what my mid sounds like. That's what my low sounds like.
You need to get a 4-channel EQ up there.
Yeah, I do. I like it better than the other ones. So. Don't let that confuse you. Yeah. No, I seriously, this, if you guys have my template, you have a 4-band EQ, it sounds better than the other EQs, so use it. I like in DJ EQs, a really gentle EQ compared to other EQs, because it doesn't sound so painfully harsh. It just is really like nice and smooth and gentle. Same thing with filters.
How do you map 4 knobs into 3?
You don't. You skip the, I don't have mid-low mapped.
So you just leave it up all the time?
Yeah, you don't really need it.
Try that.
What do you mean by 4 channels? I don't see.
So,
You've got 4 knobs in both the damn volume figures.
so you see how I've got high, mid, low, and low? It's because you've got my mapping. And essentially what I did there is I have another band that's like in here, right? So I've got a band here that's mid-high and a band here that's mid-low, and then here's my low and here's my high, right? So that's all that does. But you don't, with the S4, because you only have 3 knobs, it's just the mid-high, and it works the same as another DJ EQ would. The mid-low is not a control that you ever really need. Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Thanks for confusing everybody, Walt.
You're confusing me. I'm like, why is there 4 knobs?
Yeah, it's because this one. If you're wondering, there's a lot of, another bird walk. If you go to your mixer section, you have, of your setup, you have different EQ types and different filter types. Between all of these, if you want to sound like the Allen and Heath zone, use the zone. The Z ISO is an isolator, which is kind of cool. Nuo and P600 are all also classic EQs. And then the Z is the new Z2, the new Traktor Z2. That's what the EQs on that sound like. And then the P800 and the P600 are the Pioneer 800 and the Pioneer 600, DJMs. And then the Nuo is, I don't know.
So it's
I
putting,
think it's an Eckler. It's an Eckler EQ.
it's putting preset what that EQ sounds like for those particular consoles.
Yeah, how awesome is that, right? It's pretty cool. So that's cool. Same thing with filters. Ladder is a Pioneer filter. Zone is the Allen and Heath filter. And Z is the Z filter from the Z mixer, and it's somewhere in between the two of them. The ladder filter is too sharp. The zone filter is too calm. The Z filter is perfect. Just right
What does
Goldilocks.
the filter do? Did you?
We haven't gotten there
Okay.
yet. So yeah, I'll get to filter. Okay, so EQ. How we're gonna, let me just make sure I'm on track here. Close that. Go to this. Okay, so we're gonna talk about 2 different EQ techniques, and then we're gonna use them both together in the same mix. So the first one is blending mids and highs. We want to use this technology to blending mids and highs. That's funny. Use this technology to blend your mids and highs slowly. This technology will be most effective over the course of a phrase. Same thing as the slow fades. We're going to slowly blend things together with our mids and highs, right? Usually when you adjust EQs, you're going to be adjusting the EQs on both channels at the same time. Not always. Learn the rules to break the rules, right? So, then the other technique we have is our bass swap or our bass drop. So bass is the low frequency, right? That's the frequency that people feel more than they hear. This technique works best at the moment you want to switch the focus from one song to another. right? You can use material in a song to help your bass drop transitions. So use a drop out before a thing to introduce a drop, or if there's a huge 808 right before a 1 happens on a song, you can make it go ooh, and then have the new transition drop, right? So you can use the, okay. So let's play with a couple of these. So I'm going to use both of these together because it's important, but over the course of this mix it'll make sense and we can do it slowly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same mix, and I'm going to launch this one at the 5, so same way I've been doing it. I'm going to start with the left bass, mid, and high turned down. Your mid and high don't have to be turned all the way down, they can turn about here. Your bass, you want it all the way down. And I'll explain that why, well, I'll explain that why now. So mid and high are, you can think of like as your mental focus, your eyes, and then it's also what your heart is paying attention to. So that's your mid and your high. That's really what this part of your body is paying attention to. Your bass is from here down. It's your gut, your groin, and your legs, and it's what they're listening to. So bass is very much like a bucket. And everyone who's listening to your song is going to be holding a bucket of bass, right? And they're dancing and they're loving this big heavy bucket. Occasionally, you can take everything out of the bucket and they'll be like, where's my bass? And then you give it back and they're like, yes, my bass is back, right? That's like, so build-ups and breakdowns, that happens in songs. At no point in time do you want to overfill their bucket. It's going to be a huge mess on the dance floor if everyone's bucket of bass overflows, right? So we want to make sure that everyone has the right amount of bass at all times. Like I said, you can pull it out if you're going to give it back again, but the right amount of bass at all times without making a huge mess. Does that make sense? Cool. So we never want we never want both basses up when there's bass happening in both songs. We want to be able to swap between the two. The highs and the mids are going to be much more of a salt and pepper to taste thing. You're going to be like, a little bit more highs in this song, a little bit less highs in this song, a little bit more mids, a little bit less mids, right? We're going to kind of balance them and hear the difference. And you can kind of play with those a little bit more too in the mix. You can really kind of like, oh, it's too much, oh, it's too little, right? So I'm going to do this mix. During the course of, we're going to mark this mix as phrases 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this song, right? So I want to be totally mixed into this song by the time that it gets to 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the first phrase, which is just the drum beats. I'll zoom in so we can kind of see it a little bit better. I'm going to use, yes?
Is there ever going to be a time when you have 2 tracks playing at the same time for longer than 4 phrases?
Yes, absolutely.
This is just a simple way.
This is just a simple way. All of these techniques are a demonstration of the techniques. You can use them to blend and do mashups and do crazy 4-deck mixing with acapellas and you can, yeah. These are all just the simplified techniques and the ways to practice them. You will end up pulling them out in your mixes in ways that I couldn't have even told you. Yeah. But doing mashups, usually what you'll do is you'll let 2 songs play for the majority of each other. And probably jump around in them in some way. What was the song, what was the mashup that Zed in the DJ class did?
Zed?
No, not Zed.
Endo?
No. The guy who did our first church class, who had all the controllers, the MIDI finder and stuff.
That guy.
What was that mashup that he did? It was
Jed
sweet.
is his name.
Jed,
He used, it's tricky with the instrumental to ghosts and stuff.
There you go. Sweet mashup that he figured out, and he figured out where to jump in and out of Tricky.
I stole it.
Yeah, and he figured out how to jump in and out of Tricky, and he played them both together, like for the course of the whole. It was like a 4-minute mashup that he did live. It was cool. It was really cool. Anyway, so that's the kind of thing you can do. You don't have to just go in for 4, out for 4.
Got it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is during the course of this first phrase here, I'm going to mix in the volume of my new track. Over the course of the second phrase, I'm going to blend the mids and the highs so that you start to pay attention more with your head to the left track. Once I get to the third phrase, I'm going to swap the basses at the third phrase, and then I'm going to spend the rest of the third phrase mixing out the mids and highs and the volume of the old track, right? And then at 4, the old track is going to be totally out. So that's how it's going to work. Now let me do it. Hold on. So volume adjust my mids. Because I want to hear more of the left vocal, right? Because it's starting to introduce more of that, right? I'm going to start to pull out the highs of the right track, start to pull some of the focus off of that into the left track, swap the basses. Right? Now that weird synth in the old track is starting to kind of get in the way. It's like not the same rhythm. So I'm going to start to really pull that out with the mids. And then I'm going to pull the volume down right at the phrase. Right there, right? So, that's an example of using all of it together. An easy way for now is if you want to just leave the volumes up. The same mix I did, but leave both volumes up and start with the EQ on the right completely in the middle, which means off, right? In the middle is off or nominal level. So same thing as our gain. If we turn the knob to the right, like this high here, you'll notice in the middle it's 0. If I go to the right it's plus, left it's minus. In the middle it's 0 or off, it's nominal. So turn it off for the right track, play it, and then we can slowly do the same kind of blend with the left track. Touching the faders. It's automatic. Right. Cool. That makes sense? Cool. So do that. Use the same 2 songs that you were using earlier. This is a rule for this class. Same 2 songs you were using earlier. Do that. Start with both faders up and just do that mix. So fading from mids and highs, right? And then swap your basses when you get to that important swap, right? Cool.
Third phrase is when you swap the bass.
In these tracks, yes. In other tracks it'll be different, but for now, just yes, it's this. You'll hear it eventually. You'll be like, yeah, okay, now's the, oh, it's coming. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, you'll hear it. It'll be good.
So that you can
Cool.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I had some good questions. The first question was about swapping basses. What do you do to the old track when you put in the bass of the new track? That's when you take it out. So that's why it's called swapping, is you would take the first one out and bring the second one in, right? You can use the material in the track to help with this transition. Let me show you an example of that. If we do this one, yeah, let's use this one. So if I go, let's see, how long is, that's that long, so that's that. So I'm going to need to go there, start at 1 to drop that one there. So if I go here and start it at 6, I think that's going to be the way it works. Okay, so if I play this track, I'm going to do this mix, but what you'll notice is, on the left track, during this entire section here, from 3 to what appears to be 5, there's no bass, right? There's no bass in the track. So I don't have to pull the bass out of the track. I can leave it in, and I can just do the mids and the highs. That way, when the bass drops from this song, or when the song drops and we hit the drop and it's like, yeah, it'll be fully in, fully awesome, right? So let me show you how that would sound here. So I'm going to pull out the mids and the highs from this track, and I'll do the same kind of mix that we've been doing before. So I'll play this one. But now I'm pulling the bass out of the other song earlier because the other song is building faster, right? It's really slow for that song. But anyway, so you get the idea?
Yeah, so that's what I didn't understand. So, because you're actually you're pulling away.
Yeah. So turning to the left, we're pulling out, right? So that's turning off. In the middle,
So when I come in with this track, I want to start with these down and then slowly add them in to 0. 'Cause
Right.
I thought you were
Yes.
overheightening.
no,
that first
yes,
track.
okay,
See what I
yes,
mean?
exactly.
Okay, that.
So that was the other question is, when you're moving these, are you ever moving them to the right? Are you ever adding stuff in? No.
Very rare.
Short answer, no. Long answer, there will be times where you will need a little bit more of something. And you will hear it. And part of the reason why it's important to practice these EQs and listen for these EQs and really break things down in your practice is because you want to be able to be familiar with your EQ enough to hear something that's too quiet that you need to push up for some reason, right? And this will happen when you're mixing a big important section with a not so important section. For example, no, I'm not even going to use that example because you guys hate it now. No, there are times where there will be an intro part to a song that has a small chord or something that you want the audience to start hearing so that they know that the new song is coming. Or that, it's a psychoacoustic thing so that psychologically they can't expect the new song to come because there's new elements being added, right? So what you want to do is you want to push that up so that it can be heard over the full high B section of the last song, right? So in order to do that, you have to boost it a little bit. It's the only time you would ever boost it, and then usually you'll bring it back down to the middle position to play the track, right? Yeah. Also, if you play a track like that Beatles tune I played, where there's no bass, next to songs like this one I'm just playing, where there's a lot of bass, sometimes I will need to boost the bass in that Beatles song to get it to be heard or to play it at the same kind of tone that you would get in other songs. There was a friend of mine who DJed at a bar in Reno called Brew Brothers, and it was like rock hip-hop top 40s club and a cover band. And so he would play for a half hour, and then the cover band would play for an hour. He'd play for a half hour, cover band would play for an hour, he'd play for an hour, they'd play for an hour, right? So that was cool, fun. He played a lot of old rock songs. So he had to do this a lot, right? Where during certain songs he was really boosting the bass in some of these songs to get them to match with the hip-hop songs that he was playing from other things, right? Just an example. Okay, EQs, do they make sense? You like them? Good, you'll learn to love them. Something you may learn to love more is a filter. So filters are a different way to adjust the volume at different frequencies. Filters cut all volume below or above a given frequency. How are we doing on time, by the way? Okay, perfect. A low-pass filter will pass frequencies below a certain point, low pass. High-pass filter will pass frequencies above a certain point. We have both on one knob, which is super cool. So let's flip back over to Ableton and demonstrate this. So as we showed before, our EQ, we can boost and cut, boost and reduce these different ranges. With a filter, we can cut at a certain point. So here's how a filter sounds. So if I take a high pass filter and I move the frequency up, it's cutting frequencies below that point, right? And instead of moving the volume at which one frequency is, I'm changing the frequency that I'm cutting. Right, exactly. So, hear that sound? This is the high pass. I'll show you on this chorus. Right? And then we'll do a low pass. Does that make sense? So filters cut instead of boost.
Can you cut out a mid-range?
You can't with a filter. Well, there are filters that will, not on our mixers though.
So you use that more of as an effect? Is that what that is?
Well, interestingly enough, if we take our bass and we turn it down, we can achieve a similar shape if we take our filter and put it where our bass frequency is, right? So that way, there's two ways of cutting out the bass of a track. We can either move our high-pass filter up a little bit, or we can turn our bass down. Same thing with the highs. We can turn our highs down. Oh, geez. There we go. We can turn our highs down like this, right? Or we could take our low-pass filter and cut until that point, right? So we have two controls that affect the high frequency range and two controls that affect the low frequency range to give us more flexibility and more diversity to the way we mix. So let's take a listen. Actually, let me make sure I'm not doing anything. Okay, so on our knob, we have the low-pass filter to the left and the high-pass filter to the right. If you turn your filter knob to the right, it will work similarly to turning down the bass. If you turn your filter knob to the left, it will work similarly to turning down the highs. Okay, so let's play with this a little bit. So this is my filter right here. I'm gonna just play this song so we can. I'm gonna play this song because I like it better. So filter, if I move it to the right, will cut my basses. If I move to the left, will cut my highs, right? So if I'm doing a mix, I can cut my bass in two different ways, right? Instead of cutting my bass with the volume knob, I can also cut my bass with the filter, like this, right? So when I'm swapping basses between two tracks, I can go like that, right? And I can pull the bass from the EQ out while dropping in the bass of the filter, or vice versa, right? With mids and highs, instead of mixing in my mids and highs with the EQ, I could use my filter to cut out the highs going this way. Right? So this gives you an additional dimension of control over the frequency. It's a sci-fi movie. So it's awesome. You will hear filters a lot in every kind of music. There are filters built into songs. When you produce a track, you will use filters to add in build-ups, to take out build-ups. Filters are what makes the wow, the original dubstep, not necessarily anymore. Wow. It's the same thing as going. Right? Filters, that's what they're used for, right? So we can use them in a mix. So I'm going to do a mix. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do a mix, the same mix that we've been doing. Where's my, what was the other song I was playing?
Right round.
Thank you. Cool. So I'm going to go from the right song to the left song again, just like we've been doing. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my bass down on the left track, and I'm going to use my filter to introduce the mids and the highs. Then on the right track, I'm going to cut the bass with my filter and pull out the mids and highs this way, right? So I'm going to use both techniques in one. And then, yeah, so we'll do this. Here we go. Is that right? Yeah?
What happens if you have the filter all the way up and then your highs and mids turned all the way down? Like, will that sort of overlap?
Yes. Yes, you have nothing.
Okay.
I mean, you have a little bit, but it's negligible, right? Do you hear? That's what we have, right?
What is it? Does it like double up the effect?
Yeah,
Or-
so because they're overlapping, because we're turning things down, in this way, what we're doing is we're turning, so here, I'll do it so we can hear it. So if we go like this. Right? All we have left is a little bit of highs,
Yeah.
so if we turn that down, right? Alternatively, and probably more often used, is if you turn the bass down and then turn the filter to the left, you get 0, right? And then as you turn it up, right? Cool. Okay, so practice that. Do a mix, keep your volume faders up, and when you mix in the left track, turn down the bass and down the filter knob. Mix in with the filter knob. When you swap the bass, turn the filter knob on the right deck up, and then bring the bass from the left track in, and then turn down the mids and highs of the right track and mix out. Is that too complicated? You want to do it one step at a time? If you can do it, awesome. If not, break it down one step at a time. Use your filters and just mix with your mids and highs and lows out of the other track, and then do the same thing again, but mix in with your EQ and out with your filter. Does that make sense? Am I being way like, just, it's, yeah, we're totally gone. Okay, so do it this way. Okay, mix in a track like this, so bass down, filter down. Mix in your track with the filter, then just do your bass swap like you did before, then mix out like you did before with these, right? Or you can mix out, I guess we'll do it this way, we'll simplify it, mix out with your filter like this, right, to the left. So essentially you're going in the same way as you're going out for this exercise. So bass and filter down, mix in with your filter, swap your basses, mix out with your filter, right? Then do the same thing but backwards. So turn your filter to the right to cut out the bass. Never mind, just do the first way, and then we'll come back into the second way together. Cool. I've heard a lot of DJs, instead of turning the volume down when they need to talk over something. Hey, what's up guys? How you doing tonight? It's DJ D-Rec, DJ Theta, DJ cutting it down, cutting it loose. Get some drinks, tip your bartenders. All right. Right, so yeah, you can use the filter to do that same kind of thing. That same kind of thing will work if you're introducing a vocal over a track that happens to have another vocal. Now, per my rules, you should have chosen your tracks better. But if it happens that you need to get out of a part of a vocal, the filter's a better way to do it than the EQ, because it'll really cut out that section. Cool? Okay. So do that mix, just bass knob or low knob and filters, right? Filters to the left or filter to the left. Mix in, swap your basses, filter to the left, right? Cool. Do that one first, and then we'll talk about we'll do the other one. Good mix. Good mix. You didn't even know we were listening. Okay, so rockin'. So that's the first kind of mix you do with a filter. Here's the second kind of mix we're gonna do with a filter, right? So we're gonna use our filter now instead of our low knob, right? So we're gonna turn our filter to the right. That's gonna cut our lows, right? We don't have to turn it all the way to the right, but we're gonna turn it a little bit to the right, right? I'm gonna actually play for you how that sounds so that you can kind of get a better idea. Here we go. So here's our low knob out, right? Here's our filter up a little bit. Both of them out. Bass out, filter up a little. Bass out, filter up a little. See, it's two ways of doing the same thing, right? So that's how we're gonna use this. So if I go like this, I'm gonna cut the bass out just like if I do this. The cool thing about this is we can hear where it's cutting, right? So you can use this is a lot of ear to hand coordination, because what you want to do is you want to hear the level that you want to accentuate, right? Because if I'm trying to play this track, if I cut out here, it's too much. It's pulling out his vocal, right? So I want to find the point just under that, right? Right there. The vocal still sounds natural, but there's no bass. So you can use that to ear. That's a lot of ear-hand coordination, or hand-ear coordination. So, same mix, this is what we're going to do. Mixing into the left track, again, the same way we've done. We're going to take our left side filter and put it up, and our left side high and mid and put it down, right? Okay, mix in our mids and highs. Mix in our mids and highs just like we did before. Start to mix out our mids and highs on the right track, right? Just pulling out a little bit. Cool. And now to swap our basses, I'm going to pull up the right filter and put the left filter in the middle. Right? Start to pull out the right track, the high and middle on the right track. Rocking. Cool? Okay, so do that mix now. Do it.
Does it take a while to learn the bass swap? Because I can't do two things with two hands at one time.
Okay, if you can't do two things with two hands at the same time, especially in different directions, it's
Yeah.
like this thing,
Yeah.
right? Can you actually, right? Okay, so the if you can't do two things with two hands at the same time, if you swap your basses,
Which one's important to do first?
good question. I'm going to skip ahead of these tracks a little bit to the point where I'd swap the basses. Let's just try here, this might work. That's awful. Stop. Where did you go? Wait, sit. There we go. No, that's too late. Cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to listen for a point to pull the bass out of the right track first, and then bring the bass in from the left track. You never want two basses up at the same time. Spill your buckets, right? Right? The other thing is you always want to make sure your bass is up at the phrase so that you drop your bass, right? If you can't do the two things at the same time, which you will eventually, but I understand. It's two knobs in two different directions, you have to stop in the middle. Everyone feels the detents or the clicks in the middle of the knobs, right? Yeah, so that's you want to feel for that. And as you use these knobs like this, you will learn to feel that. You'll learn to feel where that is and where the bottom of the knob is and how to get in between them quickly. And it's never perfect. You'll always overshoot it or undershoot it a little bit, but you'll be faster at getting there. It's like a bass player who doesn't have frets, like a stand-up bass player. They learn eventually to just tune automatically, like by moving their finger up or down a little bit as they're playing, because there's no set tuning on their bass. It's just a flat fret. We don't need to get into that. Yeah, it's the same idea. Just you'll get there. It's cool. Okay, so I'm gonna stop you for the last 5 minutes here. So the last thing I want to say is practice these techniques, and like I said earlier, simplify them as much as possible. So if you're going to practice mixing, if you're going to practice using your mids and your highs, just find 2 points in a song where the low doesn't matter. Find 2 points in the song where there isn't low in one song and there is in the other, and then when you get to the low in the one song, the other song drops out. And you can find songs like that where just match it, like look for transitions like I showed you, where in that one song it was all blue, there's no red in that part of the track. And then find another song where it's all red. Awesome. Where it's all red at first and then it's blue and it drops out, right? And just find those so that you can leave your mid lows in the middle, and then just do that same mix 4 or 5 times, just mixing your highs and your mids until you get 1 or 2 or 3 ways of making sure of hitting that and making sure that you accent the right parts and pull out the right parts and make them balance together, right? Same thing if you do your bass swaps. If you want to just practice no mids and highs, just swapping basses, that's really important. Do that as well. Filters, try to do a mix with only filters, right? Simplify it for yourself and practice just those pieces. And then, once you get each of those individual pieces, try doing a mix with just the filter and the bass knob. Then, with just the filter and the mids and highs. right? So simplify all of these pieces so that as you figure out the little parts, they start to stack up in your bag of tricks, and it'll start to happen. You'll be in the mix and you'll just go, yeah, ooh, that was perfect, right? You'll hear it, you'll listen for it. It's hand-ear coordination rather than hand-brain-ear coordination, because you don't want that brain thing in the middle. You want to get rid of that. That'll slow you down. So, yeah. Okay, so that was week 3. That week 3? Yeah.